Today's gospel, on the face of it, is troubling. While at a back from the dead party for her brother, Lazarus, Mary anoints Jesus' feet with a very expensive perfume and her tears. Judas expresses what everyone else is thinking. Her act is inappropriately extravagant. It would be like taking Mother Teresa an $800 bottle of wine. Then we are caught off guard by Jesus' seeming callous response, telling us, "You will have the poor with you always, but not me." While I can appreciate John's literary genius of using the story to foreshadow Jesus' washing of his disciples' feet and Mary Magdalene's failed attempt to anoint his body after his death, over the years, I have struggled to make sense of how someone who identified with the marginalized could sound so indifferent to their needs. A passage in a book I count in my top 100, To Kill a Mockingbird, offers some insights into what I think Jesus was getting at. This book tells of widower Atticus Finch, who is raising his young son and daughter amid the racism and classism of Depression-era Alabama. Jim and Scout face the taunting neighbors and the taunting of school peers when Atticus agrees to defend a black man accused of raping a white woman. Mrs. DuBose, an elderly neighbor, sits on her front porch and torments the children with comments as they walk home from school. One day, Jim can't take it anymore. He takes his revenge by grabbing a baton and bashing all of Mrs. DuBose's prize camellias. Atticus punishes the children by having them go to her home and read aloud to her for 2 hours every afternoon for a month. Scout remembers an oppressive odor met us when we crossed the threshold, an odor I had met many times in rain-rotted gray houses. It always made me afraid, expectant, watchful. Each afternoon, they read while Mrs. DuBose sleeps and drools until an alarm clock rings, and then the children run outside to breathe fresh air. Finally, the month is up, and not long afterwards, Mrs. DuBose dies. The children are surprised when Atticus tells them that she was addicted to morphine and that their reading sessions helped her to wean herself so she could die in freedom. He says, "I wanted you to see what real courage is. It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. You rarely win, but sometimes you do." Incredible words. They'd be all the more incredible if I could say them like Gregory Peck does in the movie. But they still bear repeating. I want you to listen one more time. I wanted you to see what courage is. It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. You rarely win, but sometimes you do. Jesus couldn't have said it better. While Atticus's explicit lesson was about courage, he was teaching his children an essential life skill. He was teaching them empathy, how to see the world from the perspective of another by being fully present to them, and how losing ourselves in another, even those we might find disagreeable can make all the difference. Empathy is a hot topic these days, especially in America, where Obama brought it to the forefront when he suggested a Supreme Court justice should have the quality of empathy. The Republicans made great fun of it. But ever since, neuroscientists, educators, psychologists, and even a few theologians are exploring its importance to humanity. It used to be thought that empathy is what makes us human. But Frans de Waal, who has spent a lifetime studying primates, has published a book recently entitled The Age of Empathy: Nature's Lessons for a Kinder Society. Referring to numerous animal behavioral studies, he makes the case that from lab rats to chimpanzees to elephants, they all show a capacity for empathy. Neuroscientists have even identified the part of the brain where our empathy is hardwired, where it resides. But even though the capacity to empathize is there, we still have to learn to use it over a lifetime. It's kind of like with your computer. You know, it can do a lot of things that you don't even know about yet. You have to learn it's there before you can use it. Empathy is often misunderstood and confused for other things. So it might be easier to explain by explaining what it is not. Empathy is not the same as love. If love is the giving from our heart without expectation, empathy is a quality of being fully present to another person, focusing on the other, which often opens our hearts to such giving. Love is abstract without empathy. Empathy brings love to action. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy requires agreement with the other person's point of view. Empathy means we fully let in what the other expresses without agreeing or disagreeing. Empathy implies seeking to understand, not seeking agreement or disagreement. Empathy leads to unity. Sympathy divides us. Empathy is not being nice, but it is being kind. If by being nice we mean polite, proper behavior, empathy can often be the opposite of niceness. Empathy calls for our authenticity and honesty. Empathy acknowledges what is often kept hidden by the polite, nice world, bringing those uncomfortable issues to the forefront. Being nice can hide the seamier side of life. Empathy breaks through denial and tells it the way it is. It is kinder to tell someone they have body odor than let them continue to offend unaware. Empathy is not passivity. Being empathetic does not mean becoming a doormat without needs and expression, or indifferent to conflict. Empathy is an active process of presence, listening, observing, and intentionally opening to someone other than ourselves. In fact, empathy moves us to the center of conflict. Human beings are always going to disagree, misunderstand, react, and so forth. Our world and our own lives are full of examples of this. Empathy works directly with this truth. By deeply understanding one another, we can reduce misunderstanding, see clearly how our views differ, and build trust through the truly courageous act of letting another human being fully into our awareness and maybe even our hearts.